Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. I want you to start by literally picturing this. You are walking into the absolute most important meeting of your entire life. You know the feeling, right? Your palms are a little sweaty, your heart's beating fast, but hey, you are fully prepared. You walk through the door, you sit down, and you lose the entire opportunity before you even open your mouth to say a single word.
Sounds like an absolute nightmare, right? Well, here is the incredibly unsettling truth we're unpacking today. That crucial opportunity, it wasn't lost because you stumbled on a question. It wasn't lost because of some weird typo on your resume. It was lost because of a completely silent, almost instantaneous judgment made by the other person's brain. Before the actual conversation even started, a hard verdict was reached about exactly who you are and whether you're worth their trust, their money, or their time.
And it happens so fast, it's almost hard to believe. Researchers have found that it takes just 3 seconds, and honestly, sometimes less than a single second, for this permanent judgment to just lock in. It is one of the most consistently repeated findings in modern psychology. The wealthiest, most powerful people in the world, they absolutely do not just get lucky with how they're perceived in those 3 seconds. They engineer it. And today, we're going to break down exactly how they do it.
Which brings us to part one, the 3-second verdict.
To really wrap our heads around this, just picture a hiring manager sitting behind a desk. There are 5 perfectly qualified candidates waiting outside her door. Every single one of them has prepped for weeks. But here's the kicker. Before the first handshake even happens, one candidate gains a massive, invisible advantage. The research actually shows that interviewers form a rock-solid initial impression right there in the doorway, way before the structured questions start. The rest of the interview, it basically just becomes an unconscious search for evidence to confirm that very first impression. So the outcome isn't decided at the desk, it is decided in the doorway. Why on earth do our brains do this? Well, you've got to look back at human evolution. Long before boardrooms and coffee shop pitch meetings, our survival depended entirely on our ability to read a stranger's intentions in an absolute flash. Was that figure approaching you a friend or a threat? If you took the time to think about it, well, you didn't survive. Psychologists called this rapid-fire judgment machine thin slicing. And that ancient survival alarm system, it is running right now, full speed, in modern job interviews and first dates.
Let's dig into the hard data in part two, the science of snap judgments. And this study brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of thin slicing. Psychologists Nalini Ambati and Robert Rosenthal ran this staggering experiment where they showed people just a few seconds of silent video clips of college instructors teaching. No sound, zero context, literally just movement. From those silent seconds alone, the viewers had to rate the instructor's effectiveness. Astonishingly, those split-second silent judgments perfectly matched the end-of-year evaluations from students who had sat through an entire 16-week semester with those exact same instructors. Think about that for a second. A few seconds yielded the exact same conclusion as 16 weeks. It's not magic. It is simply pattern recognition running so incredibly fast that you never even notice it happening. But here's the catch. Once that rapid pattern locks into place, the brain stops being curious. It gets highly defensive, and it starts fiercely protecting the verdict it just made.
That defensiveness brings us to part 3, the halo effect and confirmation bias. These are the invisible cognitive forces that make our snap judgments so stubborn and honestly sometimes a little dangerous. Back in the early 20th century, psychologist Edward Thorndike noticed that military officers were letting one strong impression of a soldier, like say their physical bearing, completely bleed into totally unrelated ratings, like their intelligence. He coined this the halo effect. It's basically when one positive trait convinces us, without any real evidence, that a person must just be good at everything. It explains why we immediately assume confident people are smart, or why attractive people benefit from the beautiful is good stereotype. I mean, it's the reason entire investment rounds have been closed purely on a founder's charisma. But hey, the halo effect definitely cuts both ways. A negative halo can be absolutely devastating. One incredibly nervous stumble or a single badly timed joke can entirely ruin the image of an otherwise brilliant person. We love to think of ourselves as these highly logical beings, but the data completely disagrees. The truth is, we are emotional creatures who occasionally rationalize.
And what defends that initial, completely emotional judgment? Confirmation bias. Think of this as your brain's very own silent lawyer. Its only job is to furiously build a case to defend your first impression, constantly filtering out any contradictory evidence. If your first impression of someone is negative, a totally neutral comment they make 20 minutes later will suddenly get reinterpreted by your brain as smug or dismissive. So a first impression isn't just a fleeting opening thought. It becomes a lens. The first few seconds literally shape the lens through which the entire rest of the relationship is viewed. Because of this, mastering those first few seconds is undeniably the highest return investment you can possibly make in your professional and personal life.
Let's look at the specifics in part 4, warmth, competence, and status. So what exactly is your brain furiously scanning for in those critical 3 seconds? It really comes down to a few specific variables, and it all begins with your physical and vocal cues. Like we said, your body is doing a ton of talking before your voice even gets a chance. Research shows an open, upright posture instantly signals confidence and safety. A firm handshake signals emotional stability. And psychologist Paul Ekman's research highlights the Duchenne smile. That's a genuine smile that actually engages the muscles around your eyes, which, by the way, is almost impossible to fake. You add in steady eye contact, attire that matches the vibe of the room, and a measured, unhurried vocal pace, you are naturally signaling high status and safety to every single person in that room. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. This is kind of the intellectual climax of this explainer. Psychologist Susan Fiske found that we judge people on 2 main dimensions, warmth and competence. But here is the high achiever paradox that almost always trade off. The warmer and kinder you seem, the more people might actually underestimate your competence. On the flip side, the more highly competent and razor-sharp you appear, the colder people assume you are. The true master key, the absolute sweet spot shared by the world's most magnetic people, is the ability to effortlessly signal both at exactly the same time. So how do we actually pull this off? Let's get tactical with part 5, the 90-second playbook. These are the actionable, battle-tested strategies used by the world's sharpest leaders. But before we hit the steps, remember this golden rule. A first impression is incredibly cheap to make, but repairing a bad one is wildly expensive. It's not impossible to undo a bad first impression, but because of that confirmation bias we just talked about, it costs a massive amount of time. It takes a long, highly consistent pattern of contradicting evidence to literally force someone's brain to rewrite the story they've already made up about you. It's just so much easier to get it right the first time. So, here is your practical routine before you enter any room. Step 1, check that posture. Keep it open, relaxed, and upright. Step 2, offer a genuine expression and hold steady eye contact. Step 3, slightly slow down your speech. Notice how my voice just shifted right there? A measured pace that is totally unafraid of silence naturally commands authority. Step 4, wear congruent attire that removes any friction between your appearance and your actual expertise. And finally, step 5, signal warmth and competence together. Ask a real question, listen intensely, and speak with calm, collected clarity.
And look, I want to be super clear here. None of this is about being manipulative. It's definitely not about changing who you fundamentally are. It is simply about respecting how human perception actually functions in the real world. It's about becoming a far more intentional, dialed-in version of the exact person you already are, so that your true expertise actually gets a fair chance to be heard. Which brings us right back to that metaphorical doorway we started with. The very next time you walk into a room, ancient machinery in the brains of everyone present is going to weigh and measure you in mere seconds. You cannot switch their machinery off, but you do know exactly how it works now. So the only question left is, are you going to leave the next verdict to chance, or will you walk in already knowing exactly how to own the room? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. I'll catch you in the next one.